Hi, this is Tracy from Dandelion Pickin'. Today I'm going to make a cute gnome using the Santa cutout from Dollar Tree. So I have the Santa face cutout from Dollar Tree. I have a mop head from Dollar Tree as well. This red burlap I decided not to use. I have the ink colored Waverly chalk paint from Walmart. The Mod Podge, that one's from the Dollar Tree. Some twine, some paintbrushes, some sparkly red pipe cleaner, a couple of noses. I always grab both size noses just because I never know what's going to look good. A piece of burlap that I already cut out, and some buffalo check paper, some scissors, and a glue gun. So the first thing I did is heat up the hat trim and the mustache on the snowman. Now, this was a struggle to get this off. Obviously, I fast forwarded through that part, but you can see how beat up he is. So just be really careful when you make one of these. If you do, you don't have to take the stuff off. So I used the black Waverly paint, and I painted all around the edges of the snowman. Well, wait, of the Santa. He's not a snowman, sorry. The edges of the Santa. And I did this because I wanted to make sure if I missed any spots with the paper or whatnot, you didn't see at the top. And then at the bottom, I just wanted there to be some coverage under the beard so he didn't look unfinished. So I just dried that with my hair dryer, and that chalk paint dries actually really fast. So once I had that done, I painted the top of the hat, the part that's the fur on a Santa hat. I painted it black. So I set those aside and traced the hat part out on the buffalo check paper. And I only needed the top above the black hat piece right there. So you can see I gave it a generous amount. Made sure it fit. And then I took the hat piece and put it back on there and then traced around it so I could tell how much I needed and how much I didn't need. So once I figured that out, I cut it until I knew I could put the hat piece on and it wasn't gonna show any of the other stuff. So I Mod Podged a little bit on the hat itself, and then I also Mod Podged on the wood and made sure it was on there securely. So he still looks like a Santa face, but not for long. So I took that mop, and I know that that little black piece comes out so you can pull those strings out easier. On this mop head, I could not get that black piece out to save my life. So what I did is I set all the rope out, and I kind of made it in a beard shape. I took my twine and glued it down one side. This was so I didn't have to glue each individual piece, and it seemed less time consuming to me, but you could make the beard however you want. You could use fur. That actually is a whole lot easier. So I went back and I put the twine across it again just to give it more security and make sure those little pieces didn't move. And you'll be able to see that it actually worked. So I flipped it, and then I glued it again so that those stayed together. It seems like a lot of work doing this, but once it was done, it actually worked out really well. So at this point, I cut it off to see how the beard looks on my Santa Gnome and if I wanted it thicker. So I decided to make it one more layer thicker. And honestly, after I got finished with him, it would have been fine at just one layer with the way that I did it. So I just did the same thing with the other pieces that I had cut off. So I'd only used one string and had a lot of string left over. So I just arranged them kind of in the same beard-like fashion. So I laid the first one on so that I had a double thick beard. So I glued it down again the same way. So I'm gluing down the two, basically the two mop strings together. So you can see I run the twine underneath of that second set, but I didn't glue it. So I didn't fast forward this part because I wanted you guys to see all of the part of how I did the string. So I have two pieces and my string is still running from the back to the front. So I went ahead and set that aside, and you'll see in a little while how I just flipped the piece of string forward. So now I went ahead and cut out the burlap to fit onto the top of the hat. I just took some Mod Podge and made sure it was glued down. So once I had that on there, the burlap likes to fray on the edges. So a trick that I've always used with burlap is I will just take a little bit more of the Mod Podge and run it along the edges of the burlap. So I had that down, made sure it fit correctly, and then I cut off my excess, because there's no way to get it exact until it's on the piece itself. So you can see here is where I'm going to go ahead and secure my edges so that they don't fray anymore. I sanded down the paper on the top of the Santa hat, and I did it now because I had let it dry for a while. Remember, when you sand, always sand down. So here's where I went ahead. I was putting on the beard at this time. So I cut off as much as I could of the mop on one side of the beard, the side that I was going to glue down, so that it laid flatter underneath the top of the hat. Now I knew from previous experience, you can see here is where I flip over the string so that you're not seeing the string on the front part of the beard. So I knew from experience that this beard was going to make the top of my hat sit up higher than it should. You see how easily that just sits down on there compared to putting it string by string by string. It was really easy to maneuver it into the circle and move it around. Then I cut off those strings that had been loose that I used to wrap the other side. So I put the top of the hat on just to make sure it fit correctly. And again, like I said, I knew that the top of the hat wasn't going to sit down onto the beard flat. So I took another piece of the mop string and I ran it across the top of the beard, or top of the hat piece, to give it that stability, so that when I glue it down, it sits correctly. So I checked for fit again. And then I went ahead and hot glued onto that string. And then I also hot glued onto the mop strings themselves because it will sit there on the front of the hat piece. So I held it there until I knew it was dry. And I show you there that you can see that it sits up a little bit higher. So at this point, this is where the fun begins. I start unraveling the mop strings to get this super cute curly little beard. And I know a lot of people brush that out, and I like it this way, so I just left it. So I wanted to make a cute little end for his hat. So I took some of that what is that stuff called? That pipe cleaner. And I wrapped it in a circle and made like a little boingy thing that was just really cute on the end of his hat. A little bit different. So I thought it was cute. I ended up using the biggest half bead that I had, and I had painted that black, so I ended up using that for his nose. And he actually looks adorable. He almost looks like a little gnome dog. So then I wanted to give him a heart. So I took another one of the pipe cleaners, made a little heart, secured it together, and hot glued it underneath of his beard. And if you don't know the story of why I put a heart under the beard, go watch the video about what makes a joy me, not a know me, but a joy me. What makes a joy me different than a know me? So once I had the heart down, he was finished. Now, as much as I loved the way he turned out, he was a little bit too plain for me. He actually does look like a puppy dog gnome. Now, the more I look at it in the video, the more he looks like a puppy dog. So I changed him, and I took off the red and I added green. And I just used some green ribbon that I had and went back and forth on his hat and on his little ball on his head. And so here he is with just the red, and then you saw the green. So I liked him both ways. I had to do green because that's my thing this year. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you make one in a way that you love it, and I hope that you find lots of joy in this Gnome.